Anirudh Venkatesh formally began learning Carnatic music from Srimati Padma Kutty in the fall of 1996, shortly after turning 5 years old. He has continued learning with Srimati Padma Kutty, but has also had the opportunity to learn from the distinguished gurus Srimati Sugandha Kalamegham and Sri Sita Rama Sharma. In 2002, he was initiated into the Samangudi Bani by Sri Pale C.K. Ramachandran. Since 2005, Anirudh has been training under the illustrious Padma Bhushan Sri P.S. Narayanaswamy. Anirudh is a regular performer in many of Chennai's prestigious sabhas during the Chennai December Season Festival and has performed in several other cities in India and abroad. In 2012, he received the Tanjavur S. Kalyanaraman Endowment Award from Sri Krishna Gana Sabha, Chennai. For a merit-worthy concert he sang in the Sabha's 2011 Gokulashtami Festival Concert Series. He was also featured in the Madras Music Academy's 2012 Spirit of Youth Festival, for which he was awarded Best Male Vocalist, the Madras Music Academy's 2013 HCL Concert Series, for which he won Best Concert, and in the Academy's 88th, 92nd, and 93rd Annual December Concert Series. Anirudh studied computer science at Stanford University and is currently working as a software engineer at Snap Inc. in Los Angeles, California. Thank you so much for joining us and for being a part of this year's ICAPS Online Mahotsavam. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us about your artistic journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So my introduction to Indian classical music is actually, interestingly, through my sister, who had started learning Indian classical dance. So my sister Madhvi, who's 2 years older than me, started learning Bharatanatyam at the age of 3. And as a young boy, I was always very, very much drawn to the sound of the mridangam in all the dance programs that I attended with her, and so my parents saw that I sort of had a clear affinity for the mridangam specifically. So they actually initially took me to a local mridangam teacher, and given I think I was about 4 at the time, and he basically said, he's a little bit too young. Let him start with some vocal music first, and then eventually he can, come back to the mridangam once he's grown a little bit older. So my parents then brought me to a local guru for vocal lessons. And we were extremely fortunate to have Srimati Padma Kutty in our community in Southern California. So I was basically initiated into vocal Carnatic music with her, and I kind of just started with that and just kept going. Of course, my passion and love for the mridangam has kind of persisted, and I've gotten a chance to kind of learn some of that later on. But that's really how I started with vocal music. So Padma Aunty was just the most incredible teacher, and I think there's a lot of us in the Southern California area who are now kind of pursuing this at either a professional or a semi-professional level. And I think a lot of that can be traced back to the very strong foundation that Padmati gave us. She was definitely, she was somewhat of a strict disciplinarian. She would know right away if you hadn't practiced even for a single day a week. But she really laid an incredible foundation for all of us, really stressed all of the fundamentals as far as not just the music itself and shruti and layam and all of that, but also kind of good vocal techniques and kind of open mouth singing as well. So I think through Padma Aunty, I was about 5. It was the fall of 1996, I think, when I started with her, and through learning with Padma Aunty, I made a very, very close group of friends, all of us who were kind of similar age, who were learning with Padma Aunty, and we kind of grew up together doing music. So I think that was something that really I guess made me enjoy the process of learning at an early age was it was definitely very helpful to have extremely close friends. I'd say even now, like my uh, closest friend is someone who I grew up with learning music. Um, so we all continued with Bhangarti in that very early stage. Around after learning with her for maybe 5 or 6 years, I then during the summers, Bhangarti would go to India to her hometown in Kerala. Um, so what I started doing and what some of the other students started doing who are pretty serious about the music and who enjoyed it, we actually would use our summer breaks to go take intensive training with other gurus in India, um, or even locally. Um, so my first experience here was I went to Chennai in I think it was the summer of 2000, perhaps. I don't remember the exact year, but it was around then. And I learned from Srimati Sugandha Karnamegam, who's a very renowned vocalist in Chennai. Learned with her for a summer. Um, then I think for the following few years, during those summers, I had the chance um, to really take some intensive lessons under um, Sri Palay C.K. Ramachandran, who's a senior disciple of the doyen Shemmangudi Srinivasa Iyer. And Palay sir actually sung alongside with him on stage for decades. So I was extremely fortunate because he actually was visiting LA for a few summers. And so I had the immense fortune of, during my summer breaks, taking advanced training with him. And I think those three summers that I learned from him were I think I saw myself grow pretty rapidly in terms of some of the more improvisational aspects of the music. So he really kind of honed a lot of those skills at an early stage. Um, and also, I think this kind of was sort of my introduction to that Shemmangudi Bani, or that whole kind of school. Um, After those 3 years, I then had the fortune of this was, I think, from the summer of 2005 onwards. So I just finished eighth grade. I had the immense fortune and privilege to go to India and learn from the legendary teacher Padma Bhushan Shri P.S. Narayanaswamy. So he also was a disciple of Shemmangudi Srinivasa Iyer, so I was able to kind of continue in that school of thought. And basically, I think he kind of took my training to sort of the next level, and basically from that summer of 2005 all the way till I think the summer of 2011, every single summer consecutively. So I was all the way into like my second year of college. I was basically able to go to India, go to Chennai in the summers, and spend the summer training under him. So I think that period was also a very, very formative and incredible stage of learning. And of course, PSN sir is one of the greatest gurus who's ever existed, in my opinion. But also there was a very kind of beautiful environment with amongst all of the disciples of PSN sir. There'd be, I'd go to his house for morning classes, and the evening a bunch of us would come. There'd be local students, there'd be students from abroad like me, but we would all kind of go to his house in the evenings whenever he was home, and just kind of sit around in a circle and sing together. And I think that kind of that sort of experience over the years was also a very invaluable learning experience for me, because it was not just learning from PSN sir directly, but kind of just just all the things that I kind of absorbed from being in that environment. And of course, he was there to also guide us as we were all singing together. But yeah, I'm very, very grateful for that whole experience. Um, since then, I've mostly been trying to kind of practice the huge body of compositions that I've learned over the years, and just continue working on various aspects of the music, all the way from kriti rendition to really getting a deeper understanding and delving into various ragas and pieces of manodharma or improvisation. And now, of course, PSN sir is he's not teaching too much at this stage, but I have still benefited so much from his guidance, since I've stopped kind of going formally to him. I've also spent a few years learning from one of his senior disciples, C.R. Vaidyanathan sir. So overall, very, very fortunate to be in that PSN school. Yeah, and I think that's kind of my journey as a music student. And of course, when it comes to performances, I gave my first performance around the age of 12. It was basically a pretty informal house concert at a family friend's house. It was for 1 hour, and yeah, I think I was very, very lucky to kind of grow up in a very supportive musical community. Right, the community here in Southern California is incredibly supportive, and everyone is very, very encouraging. And I think that kind of support and encouragement in early ages is what kind of kept me going, and sort of kindled that desire to keep learning, and also enjoy the stage performance as well.
That's wonderful. What do you think the impact was of having these opportunities to, whether it's at house concerts or larger spaces, being able to do kind of 1 hour performances and things like that? Like when you have that whole time, as opposed to saying, okay, you can sing one song or something much more limited.
You say, how is that somewhat different?
Yeah, and how does that how was it different preparing for that? How was it different going through that and doing it over and over again?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely a paradigm shift, right? I think for a young child, if up until that point, I had just kind of been singing a song here at Tyagaraja Day, or a song here at Dikshitar Day, or a song at Purandaradasa Day, and actually taking that kind of next step to actually, framing like a 1 hour long concert, and actually thinking about how to structure the concert, the proportions of the different components. And of course, some of it is now improvisation, which is also a new thing. So it's definitely a lot to think about. And I think it definitely felt like a big step and a big achievement at the time. I remember, consulting very heavily with of course, my guru, and some of the more senior disciples of Padmanti, to kind of help me prepare for that. But yeah, I think there's kind of one thing that I think kind of helped leading up to it was Padmanti used to have these annual days, which is kind of separate from the organized Tyagaraja Day, Dikshitar Day, and all these things by the local Sabha. Padmanti's annual day was just for her students, and it was kind of a yearly thing, and all of us would come together, and everyone would kind of present, each student would present something. And I think those annual days were a huge learning opportunity and a huge growth opportunity, because it was a chance for all of us to, one, enjoy each other's music, and also the way that I think we kind of framed it was that each year we tried to kind of take a step forward in terms of the scope of what we're presenting. So after, for the students who are at the point where they could actually do, say, raga alapana, which is kind of one type of manodharma or improvisation, the first time that you're presenting that at annual day, I remember that being a very big thing for me. And it was like, now I'm going from just singing kritis to singing a bit of alapana and then a kriti, right? And that was kind of like a 0 to 1 step, and a pretty big step in my mind. And then from there, maybe the next year I do a little bit of alapana, akriti, and then a little bit of kalpana swaram at the end. So it was like each year there was sort of this idea where all of us were trying to kind of grow in the scope of what we're presenting. And I think, of course, the fact that all of us were kind of doing that together, we were all able to kind of motivate each other in that. And so I think that also helped a lot in us getting to the point where we could actually present like an hour-long concert, because we sort of had this. It wasn't just that we were going straight from singing like for 5 minutes at Tyagaraja Day to a full concert. We had this ability and this environment that Padma Aunty had kind of fostered for all of us, where we could just kind of motivate each other and kind of grow year by year up until the point that we were ready to present that first concert. And even that first concert was kind of a stepping stone to a few years later presenting a full-length 3-hour concert, right, with a ragam tanam pallavi and a much more kind of fully developed concert in terms of scope. So that was one thing that was very helpful, this kind of gradual the way that we were kind of gradually increasing the scope of what we were capable of presenting.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure as you were developing in scope and expand, learning to expand that, you also were going from just focused on your own song to the interaction with the supporting artists on stage. So
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit about how that growth was for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was also kind of a similar thing, right? Initially, when we would. So the reason I keep going back to these Tyagaraja days and Deekshita days was that's really the very, very early days. That was the primary opportunity that we had to kind of perform in public, right? We would for each of these things, we learn a song specifically for this, and then we'd practice it, hundreds of times, and then we'd go present that in that 5 or 10 minutes. And initially at those kinds of settings, I would just be singing with no accompaniment, right? This was when I was say 7 or 8. I would just go present a composition with just me in the Shruti box. Then what kind of started to happen is, over the years, I might just have like a mridangam accompaniment, or I might have me in the violin. And slowly through these, we kind of got a little bit more used to, to the feeling of singing with these accompanying instruments. So that was kind of another sort of gradual way that we could get more familiar with it. And then the other thing that was immensely helpful was also having close friends in the community who were violinists or mridangists who. So what ended up happening is, since we kind of grew up together and we're so close, as we kind of got to like our early teens and we started to actually enjoy this the music itself and the whole experience, it would be very common for us to kind of have like a sleepover where we do a bunch of normal, non-music related stuff, right? Just typical fun stuff. And then we'd also have a bit of time where we just kind of get together and jam as part of those sleepovers. And so that kind of very informal setting, really, really helped to gain, familiarity and comfort with the process of singing along with accompanists. And but it absolutely, it's kind of an ongoing thing, right? You might feel comfortable with an accompanist playing with you for the song, but then when you actually get to a point where you need to do like an improvisational exchange, that's kind of another ball game, right? That you kind of need to gain familiarity with and feel comfortable with. So it's again a very gradual process, but I think these sort of settings helped a lot in feeling at ease with that.
It's the sense of community helped both just foster love for the art, but also these kind of skills that are not necessarily just singing, that you have to also be able to.
100%. I think it was not only that's a great way to kind of frame it. It's not only in terms of the love for the art, but it also helped a lot of us become much better musicians because we had each other to inspire one another and to kind of grow off of and kind of learn together. And I think that kind of environment is I really owe a lot to that environment. And I think a lot of the other musicians who kind of grew up with me in that community, I think, would say the same.
That's wonderful. How did you, what went into kind of the decision, or even if it was not a decision, the path of pursuing music even once you're done with high school and you're going off to college and starting into your career and things like that?
Yeah. So I think at that point for me, it seemed kind of like an obvious thing. And the reason I say that is because I think because of this kind of environment and the friends that I had doing music, it was just kind of a very natural part of my life, right? It didn't seem like a chore. It was just kind of like every day. It was part of my routine, right? Like just like brushing my teeth, I would do some music practice, and then at the end of my day, for example. Um, so it really felt like a very natural part of my life, and I think that was one thing that kind of made it a no-brainer. And I think the other thing is by that point, by college time, I had reached a stage where I was already performing full-length concerts, both here and in India. Um, so I was getting like pretty deep into the the musical scene, and also in terms of my love for the music. I would spend a lot of my free time just listening to concerts of old masters. Um, yeah, and it was a pretty deeply entrenched part of my life at that point, that it just kind of seemed very natural that I would just continue it onwards.
It would have been a shift not to do it as opposed to keep with it.
100%. And I think like that's something that I realized when I went to college. And there might have been a few uh, during certain crunch times, say midterms or final exams, or whatever it may be, when I kind of had to take a couple of days without practice, and then it actually really felt awkward, and I felt this sort of like nagging feeling within me, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, hey, what are you doing? And so as you said, like, it actually felt completely unnatural to not have this be a part of my life. And I saw that very quickly, even within a couple of days of not engaging with it.
What advice do you have for students of music or any performing art who are, they might be middle school, high school, they've spent a number of years, they're trying to figure out how this fits in with everything else that they're doing?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I think a couple of things that jump out are, I think, one is that there is really no shortcut when it comes to an art form like this. Um, and it you have to put in the time, you have to put in the effort. Um, but if you do that, I think what you'll gain out of this, not just as a practicing artist, is sort of a lifelong treasure. And so I think the next point that I'll say is, I see a lot of students, as you mentioned, who pursue this kind of to tick a box up until they reach, say, college, and then that's kind of the end of their association with it. What I would love to encourage students of music or dance or any of the Indian classical arts to do is really is to really try and understand the value of it. And really, I think the takeaway is that there's more ways to engage with the art form than practicing it. And what I would encourage, obviously not everyone is able to pursue the art form in the same way once they go to college due to various circumstances. But what I would encourage you to do is to not let that learning go to waste, and know that the only way to be involved with it is not as a practitioner. There's n number of ways that these arts can continue to be a very strong presence in your life, even if you're not actively performing or practicing. And I think just sort of the ability to appreciate it is one thing that I think you'll take with you for the rest of your life, and that's kind of an invaluable treasure. I think in my opinion, that's even more important than practicing. Is sort of knowing the value of these art forms and being able to appreciate them. And so I think if you know, really lean into that side of things if you're unable to kind of continue practicing things, because I think you'll still extract immense value from having this just be a part of your life in some capacity. And I think the other thing I'd say is, you know, even if you are performing and whatnot, always try to think of it, approach this art form as from the perspective of a student, because I really think that it's not about some sort of, you know, terminal performance like say an Arangacham or this and that. It's really about the journey, and I think a common misconception I see is like people think that they've reached some sort of an end, quote unquote, when they you know have these sort of milestone performances. And the way I see that is those performances are just kind of unlocking the next step of the journey.
Exactly.
Right? It's kind of like an ocean where the deeper you go, the more you see is there below you to kind of explore. So that's what I would also encourage people to do. And I think also that just kind of viewing this as approaching it from the perspective of a student allows you to be inspired. And allowing yourself to be inspired is the most critical thing, I think, because allowing yourself to be inspired is what kind of unlocks your love and your excitement for the art form. And if you're able to kind of just view the whole thing from this very like this standpoint of humility, and you know, allow yourself to gain that inspiration from all artists, from all, you know, aspects of the music, from various composers, you know, various places, you then it allows you to kind of grow as an artist and sort of produce your best work, and it also keeps your love and passion for the art form growing.
Absolutely. Tell us about the pieces that you've chosen for the ICAPS performance.
Yeah, definitely. So for the ICAPS performance, so I think I basically chose 3 pieces in the 30-minute performance, and a little bit about kind of the inspiration behind pieces. So one was, you know, obviously I wanted to present some pieces that are, uh, you know, that are in line with sort of the Shamungudi school, and so, you know, or you know, sort of PSN Sir's take on the school. And then I think another consideration was also Meena Shankaran auntie. She had also, I had also asked her for some of her requests when it came to ragas, and so I tried to incorporate some of those. So the 3 pieces that I presented, the first one was a Tyagaraja Kriti, Chala Kallaladu Konna Saukyamemira in Raga Arabi. So this was a composition that my grand guru Shemangudi sir used to sing a lot, and he really popularized it. And my guru PSN sir used to sing it a lot as well. The next song I presented was Ara Gimpave in Raga Todi. It's a beautiful composition of Tyagaraja, taught to me by PSN sir. You know, just a beautiful composition. And then the last piece I sang was Karpuram Narumo. This is a composition of Andar. And this is also one of my favorite compositions that was tuned by the great T.M. Tyagarajan sir, who is also, who my guru was very much inspired by, and who also was a disciple of Shamaguri sir. So those are the 3 compositions that I presented.
That's wonderful. How do you work through, obviously an aspect of when you're singing is the lyric and the sahityam and the language.
Yeah.
And the pieces you've chosen there, you know, the Tyagaraja pieces are going to be Telugu, and how do you kind of navigate that side of it when you're figuring out how to sing how to bring out the bhavam in a piece?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So that's something that I think I've been actively paying a lot more attention to in, say, the last 2 years or so. Before then, I didn't really think too much about the way I was sort of presenting the lyrics in addition to the music. It was sort of just like the lyrics were there and it was all just kind of about the music. But I think in the last couple of years, I really started to think about the lyrics themselves and how they can also be used as a means to express further emotion and further uh, musicality as well, right? The kind of interplay between the music itself and the lyrics. Um, so that I think there's a lot of resources online that I go to, especially with Tyagaraja Kritis. There's this Tyagaraja by Bhavam by Mr. Govindan, where he basically for every single Tyagaraja Kriti he kind of takes it apart word by word, and it's definitely an invaluable resource for a lot of musicians like myself. So that's one, and then I think. Yeah, I also have friends and family who are also very familiar with the Telugu language or Sanskrit or Tamil, and so I also actively kind of check lyrics with them, especially if it comes down to a line that I'm say elaborating on more deeply in terms of some Neraval improvisation. Want to make sure that the line itself is sort of self-contained, has a good meaning, and sort of the I understand the actual word by word meaning of the line, just so I can break things up appropriately.
I think that, yeah, that really spells it out. I Do you find it easier, or do you find like an affinity with certain languages versus others, or is it more to do with the ragam or the composer?
I personally really like Telugu kritis. I feel like the music. So first of all, I think in a lot of cases, Telugu kritis are, even though I'm natively Tamil speaking, I find Telugu kritis to be easier. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, just because I feel like um, in a lot of cases, the words are just easier to pronounce. They tend to be somewhat simpler. Um, and I also feel like because I think every word ends in a vowel, it also kind of lends itself very easily to the music. So yeah, in my opinion, I feel like Telugu like kritis flow the best, and yeah, I feel like the music kind of works very well with Telugu kritis. That being said, there's a lot of Tamil kritis and Sanskrit kritis that are very, very close to my heart, that I absolutely love. And I also try to present an assortment of different languages in every concert. But yeah, I'd say maybe there's a slight preference for Telugu kritis.
Um, are there any other projects or pursuits that you have going on right now that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think right now, I think there's a few things that I'm focusing quite a bit on. One is, um, I think there's just so many treasures of compositions from the great composers of Carnatic music that I just haven't learned. Obviously, there's a fair number that I have, but there's always so much more to learn, and I feel like um, this is at this point I'm just trying to kind of expand my repertoire and really just learn more of these gems of these great masters, great composers. And then I think the other thing for me is also because I've been learning music for over 20 years now. There's so many compositions, again, gems of compositions that I've learned over the years that I'm kind of rediscovering and kind of going deeper into, which is a really nice experience because I may have learned some Tyagaraja or Shama Shastri Kriti at the age of 8 or 9, not really understood the true value of it, practiced it many times, presented it, say, at like Tyagaraja Day or something. But now, if I actually go back and I look at some of these compositions and I just see, wow, what an incredible meaning. And the lyrics are so beautiful. The way that kind of the depth of the composition in terms of the raga, and sort of the various sangadis is just so rich and so deep. And it's been such a lovely experience just kind of revisiting some of these compositions that I've learned over the years that I had kind of taken for granted at the time, and really understand the depth in them.
Yeah, I think I know you mentioned that you have some background and a love for mridangam, and I think one of the things that was very interesting for me was learning how the rhythmic patterns were used in the musical structures and the poetry for some of these composers, like the
Yeah.
Agada, with the different yatis,
Oh
or
yeah.
how the words align with the flow of the melody to
Right.
kind of, even if you don't fully understand the meaning, just singing it to the melody itself will kind of take the person down the journey of the
Exactly.
bhava. So it's one of those things where you can keep unpacking it, and
Keep
the more
unpacking.
you revisit it, the more there is. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
um, well, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely wonderful. And
Thank you so much.
uh, Anirudh's performance will be up next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So please watch it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.